Tato Jayamudirayat. Text 13, Canto 1, Chapter 2. Atak Pumbir Dvija Shrestha Varnashrama Vibhagashaha Svanustatasya Dharmasya Samsiddhir Haritoshanam Atak Pumbir Dvija Shrestha Varnashrama Vibhagashaha Svanushtatasya Dharmasya Sangsiddhir Haritoshanam. O best among the twice born, it is therefore concluded that the highest perfection one can achieve by discharging the duties prescribed for one's own occupation according to caste, divisions, and orders of life is to please the personality of Godhead. Purport. Human society all over the world is divided into 4 castes and 4 orders of life. The 4 castes are the intelligent class, the martial class, the productive caste, and the laborer caste. These castes are classified in terms of one's work and qualification, and not by birth. Then, again, there are 4 orders of life, namely student life, household life, retired, and the devotional life. In the best interest of human society, there must be such divisions of life. Otherwise, no social institution can grow in a healthy state, and in each and every one of the above mentioned divisions of life, in print in italics, the aim must be to please the supreme authority of the personality of Godhead. The institutional function of human society is known as the system of Varnashram Dharma, which is quite natural for the civilized life. The Varnashram institution is constructed to enable one to realize the absolute truth. It is not for artificial domination of one division over another. When the aim of life, namely realization of the absolute truth, is missed by too much attachment for indriya priti or sense gratification, as already discussed herein before, the institution of the Varnashrama is utilized for selfish men to pose as artificial predominance, to pose an artificial predominance over the weaker section. In the Kali Yuga, or in the age of quarrel, this artificial predominance is already current, or in the saner, in the age of quarrel, but the saner section of the people know it well that the divisions of castes and orders of life are meant for smooth social intercourse and high thinking, self-realization, and not for any other purpose. Paragraph. Herein, the statement of Bhagavatam is that the highest aim of life, or the highest perfection of the institution of Varnashram Dharma, is to cooperate conjointly for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 4.13. So the verse again. Atak pumbir dvija sreshta varnashrama vibhagasha swanustatasya dharmasya samsiddhir haritoshanam. there are messages in this chapter 2 that are, at least in principle, repeated, but repeated from a different angle of vision. The satisfaction of Hari is a repeated message in different language, but the satisfaction of the Supreme Person is the repeated message. Then this verse is taking the social structure, or Prabhupada called it the social order, that's naturally there. His declaration is it is already there, distorted maybe, but it's already there. And there's divisions like head, arms, legs, head, arms, torso, and legs. Bodies have those parts. That's natural. And social structure has those natural functions, and it's true. Not clearly identified, but a function. And then people don't know what their function is, and it gets a little messy. But less messy is where my place in society is clear, and my duty is to live my life accordingly. Just this morning, I was listening to Prabhupada describing sequentially there are more duties for the Brahmana. He gave a list. He didn't identify what those 20, but 20 duties of a Brahmana, and a lesser number for a Kshatriya, 12, lesser number for the Vaishya, 4, and 1 for the Shudra. But duty, and the Shudra duty is to serve the master. Simple. And then duties for each of the other 3. So and then subdivisions of those duties and so forth. They're more elaborate description, but the principle is being expressed. 4 and 4. Natural social divisions within society, more carefully defined, very good. And more carefully defined, then followed, even better. But the purpose is the Hari should be pleased. The personality of Godhead should be pleased. So the purpose of life is to please Krishna. And that life has these divisions of social and occupational activities or functions. Please the personality of Godhead. A celebrated message from our founder Acharya is, no, I haven't finished my work. There's another half. The other half is reestablishing or establishing Varnashram. So he wanted, and there are advocates all over the place that are advocating, this is the new frontier. This is what Prabhupada wanted. And this is what it looks like. And, this one says different than that one, says different than the other one. But here, they all agree with the principles that are in the Bhagavatam. And their natural activities for each of the 4 social and occupational divisions. And stages of life, at least for the ashram part, they're standard. The student life, married life, retired from married life, and Prabhupada said then spiritual life. What's the language he uses? Student life, household life, retired life, and devotional life. it's relevant to the audience. Certainly, devotional life is in every stage, and corresponding to the state, and there's duties, and so forth. And then the essence is the essence. The essence is the personality of God is to be pleased. That fits or matches completely Rupa Goswami's definition. You all know the definition, is standard definition. Anyabhilasha dushanyam jnana karma janavritam, etc. So the personality of Godhead is to be pleased. Not this and not that, but the personality of Godhead is to be pleased. No, will there be corollary benefits? Unlimited corollary benefits. But the corollary benefits will vanish quickly if, in other words, the now you see it, now you don't standard of temporary manifestations is the way of life of other than devotional service. And thus, because they're temporary, waste of time, useless labor, useless and so forth, in the sense that nothing permanent is established. There's the shadow of, a reflection of, the semblance of the real thing, but the real thing is absent, and therefore strong recommendation, condemning that absence of Krishna Bhakti and extolling the virtue of Krishna Bhakti, because then substance is there. So that's this whole section. The whole section is, as we discussed yesterday, it's the essence of all the Vedas, summarized by Sutta. And he knows it. He knows how to express it. And in sequence, these verses are laying it out. The starting principle doesn't change. The application of that starting principle, there's this explanation, that explanation. So now the occupation of a living entity. We're all going to do something because we're spirit soul. Our souls are active. We're covered in a body, so the body's going to be active. And then in that activity, how is that activity to look like, depending upon one's position or one's natural orientation, disposition. And there's natural, and then there's standards that one is to strive towards and become accomplished in these standards. And the purpose of all of that is that Krishna should be pleased. Krishna is to be pleased. Then comes a natural question. Well, how do you know if Krishna is pleased? He smiles. How do you know if Krishna smiles? Because then the representatives of Krishna, they smile. In Prahlad Maharaj's teachings, he expresses this point. There was the discussion amongst his friends. Where'd you learn all this stuff? We've never been outside the classroom in our homes. Where'd you learn all this stuff? And he tells the story of how he learned from Narada in the previous life, within the womb of his mother before he was born, and all of that description. Then he Prahlad expresses that hearing from Narada was hearing from the personality of Godhead. So the non-difference between the representative of and the person who one is representing. There's a difference. One is the person, the other is representative of the person. So there's that distinction. At the same time, Sakshad Hari, Sakshad Hari, not different Hari. Samasta Shastra, all the scriptures say that one who engages in the service of the representative is engaging in the service of the one who he's representing. It's quite natural. I mean, even in worldly circumstances, the same principle is acknowledged. What's that principle? The representative signs a contract. The company has to stand behind the contract. The company can't say, that fellow over there, he shouldn't have signed the contract. He's authorized to sign the contract, but it's a contract he shouldn't have signed. But once it's signed, the company is bound. That's Prabhupada's explanation. Or any other thing, a government and the agent of the government. When a judge makes a judgment, the government stands behind it because he's the representative of the government, and so forth. Now there can be misconduct or someone who's not a proper representative, and that's another problem. But the representative, the entity who one is representing, stands behind the actions of the representative. The inferences, we have a big responsibility. We're representing Krishna. Vaishnavas are representing Krishna. So sit straight. Conduct should be according to what's fitting. However, it's the same point. The same point is, in principle, if one has that one thing that I'm representing, my activity is to please Hari, Samsiddhi Hari Toshanam. That's my purpose. Then if I'm not qualified, the qualifications come. Or qualified, not qualified, qualifications come. And then over time and with a degree of bhakti, dedication to pleasing the Supreme, then one can become more qualified, more qualified, more qualified. Humility is good. Becoming qualified is better than good. And then one should approach the process that makes one better than good with humility. That is calling for the mercy of the one who one is representing. Like this very wonderful description of Srila Prabhupada's feeling himself unqualified and all of those things. In his dialogue, in his prayers, written and otherwise, just, how he lived his life, depending fully, feeling not qualified. At the same time, how bold he was. But without humility, it just make a mess. A bold mess. But with humility, and that entitles one to have the decoration of what's needed. And then one understands it's not me, it's the decorator that brings the quality, the capability. Now, material consciousness, one may be decorated with this, that, or the other ability. I mean, where does ability come from? In the material society and in the spiritual society. Everything, the source is the same. But one who has some quality or qualification or capacity or something, and they're just in the competitive world competing against others that have similar interests, the one becomes, successful or superlatively successful or something. Without humility, it doesn't amount to anything. It amounts to bondage. So it's not, the answer isn't better to not have qualification. That's not the answer. The answer is better or best dedication to Hari. So organized society, this is back to the Bhagavatam and the mandate of the Bhagavatam, from sutta to the rest of us. Recognize what your position is. And then comes the next question: how do I know what my position is? And often our position is quite blurred because society isn't well structured. It's a mess. There's chaos. And so society is not well structured. And what part of that not so well structured society do I fit in? Therefore, the Daivi Varnashram, emphasis on scripture, and then with that purpose of serving Hari, things that are unclear and muddy become more clear. I'm going to end with this. On Sunday, I had prior to Sunday, sitting on the boat, I had very, very little association with our MC, Shrutakirti. And somehow, because we got there a little early, for a good reason, Krishna's reason, I guess, he was there, so we sat together. Devaki Nandan and he were together. Devaki Nandan, this is just anecdotal, Devaki Nandan had contacted me because he's in America, asking, are you going, and we'll see you there. And so it was like, anticipating seeing, there he was. So I went and said Haribol to Devaki, and there's Shrutakirti. We had very little association. But instantly it was like we were long-standing buddies. We just conversation. It was all quite natural. And one of the things, in his very soft, humble way, I asked him, what are you doing? And he described what he's doing. And he has some administration in the Vrindavan temple. You're an administrator? He chuckled and said, I avoided it for 40 years. But now I'm in some administrative position. Because Panchagoda engaged him. He's a Brahmana, so by his nature, so he's now a Brahmana with some administrative capacity, at least title, and is overseeing the deity worship. He's not like a pujari. He's not been around doing umpteen things for so many years as a pujari, and he's just a Brahmana by disposition. So the point is, in service to Krishna, we can do anything. By his nature, he would just carry on being affable Shrutakirti, telling Prabhupada stories and being in the humble mood of service. But when Panchagoda kind of twisted his arm, he accepted. And and being an MC, he's not like a social guy. He's a very quiet man by disposition. But look what he's doing, in so forth and so on. So our little bit like one of the questions last night is there predisposition or is there free will? It's not like it's in the stars for Shrutakirti that he's supposed to, after 40 years of devotional service, he's supposed to become administrator. Rather by association with another Vaishnava, Panchagoda, he took on that service. And he loves being in Vrindavan. And others, without listing, for example, our situation is not so rigid or clear-cut, the Varnashram. This is my understanding. It's not, you're either this or that or the other, and that's it. You just have to spin the dial and find out which one you are. But by nature and by regard for serving, for pleasing Krishna, that one can be engaged in so many different ways. But when I'm engaged in this way, my character should match this way. That, like the 20 features or duties of a Brahmana. If you're going to do Brahminical service, find out what those qualities are and learned and this and that and the other and gentle and so many characteristics and duties, and act accordingly. And if you're Kshatriya, then you have to be valorous, ready for protecting, in a way that's appropriate for the circumstance. So the main item is Hari should be pleased. Here's something that came up yesterday. For example, a nice example. So, riding in the car on the way to the Northeastern program, and a mail comes from a devotee whose father died in India during the day, and now it's over here. It's evening. So he just within some 12 hours or 24 hours, their father died. And they have deities at home. They have their pujari at the temple. So is there some regulation they're supposed to observe? And so I contacted the deity worship minister for North America. And the reply was, in ISKCON, this verse, in ISKCON, the main consideration is consciousness of the pujari. That is, A or B. If one is distracted and one can't be present and fully attentive to the service because there's emotional grief going on and so forth and so on, then you pause until that gets sorted out. And however long that's going to be is however long it's going to be for different people. So alternatively, if someone can be accepting of their father or departed family member, something, and they take it in stride, and they can stay, when they're with the deity, they're present, fully present, then they should worship the deity. So there's this notion, you're contaminated because a relative died. So you have to stay away from the deity because you're contaminated. It's X number of days. In the different places, it's different standards. So it's an example of this teaching. The main primary principle. I'm sure Hari Bhakti Vilas and other scriptures have some statements to this effect, but this was the answer that I passed on to the devotee that asked the question. Krishna should be pleased. And everything is subordinate to that. And then, how do you know that Krishna is pleased? So, if Prabhupada is present, you ask Prabhupada or his followers. In this case, these are the persons authorized. The deity worship ministry is authorized to research and evaluate and conclude. So this is from the deity worship ministry. And one may want to ask the deity worship ministry, can you give some scriptural reference for this, please? But I'm sure that there's some scriptural reference. Otherwise, they wouldn't come up with a policy. What's the policy? Krishna should be pleased. And that's the main consideration. So let's see if there's some discussion. Yes.
Actually, as I was hearing you, I was formulating question and I was seeing that, okay, as I was formulating, you were answering my question in the course of this whole lecture. And so it has become more like a clarifying question. So I have seen that when the devotees talk about Varnashrama, they tend to go into thinking about farm communities,
Yes.
and that's the version that comes out oftentimes.
Yes, it's a one-to-one correlation.
But then the message that is coming out here is that we all are situated in quite a non-ideal circumstances, but what matters the most is twofold, as you pointed out. One is that Krishna should be pleased, and secondly the character, and that is essentially captured by humility that need to come through. As Srila Prabhupada oftentimes says, one should be a perfect gentleman, and that should be the inner sort of consciousness of a practitioner. Did I capture the point?
There's one other,
Okay.
I didn't mention it, but a refrain, simple living, high thinking. So supposing one doesn't live on a farm or a rural situation, can one live simply, simple living, high thinking? Certainly. Can one living on a farm be extravagant? Certainly. Is it necessary that one, fill in the blank? There's this austerity, or you can't have heat, you can't have running water, you can't have this, you can't have, live like, let's say, Mennonites and Amish. You have to live like that. That's okay. Simple living, high thinking is the additional factor. And how that looks depends on, time, place, circumstance.
And another thought that was coming to my mind is that around Krishna should be pleased point is essentially make our life guided, and we should kind of always seek consultation before we embark on.
Well, that's Varnashram.
And that's probably the aspect of
the Brahmana
Krishna should be
in the
pleased.
society. The head is consulted.
Okay, just wanted to. Thank you.
Guru Maharaj, did I hear this right? You said humility.
Could you turn the speaker this way? It's muffled. No, more. Oh, okay, there. Good.
You said humility is good, but qualification is better than that? Something like that?
What's your point? Could you expand on that statement that you're asking me to do?
Yes, Guru Maharaj.
Transcendence is better than goodness. You understand that. I don't have to expand on that one. Humility is good. Better than good is transcendence.
So basically, humility in a worldly sense is good.
Something, yes.
But transcendental qualification.
In a worldly sense, but that's even in a mode of goodness sense. A Brahmana without Vaishnava character is good. A Brahmana that's proud is not a Brahmana. A Brahmana that's humble is a Brahmana. And then there's a Vaishnava Brahmana, who's a qualified Vaishnava Brahmana.
Yes, Maharaj, we use this very casually that that person was down to earth, and then, but it's the devotion to the Lord that's to be
Yes,
glorified.
that's exactly the point for the verse. Yes.
I have two questions, Maharaj. Is it okay?
I hope it's okay.
One from yesterday, actually. I'll start with that. So yesterday we heard about Ambarish Maharaj and Durvasa Muni's pastime. In that pastime, one question was, bothering me. Like Durvasa Muni being more like an impersonalist, he was able to approach Lord Narayan. That's where I was like, how
Why
are
not?
impersonalists able to approach Lord Narayan?
By permission. Without blessings, it can't. So blessings were granted. And he could say yes or say no. Jai and Vijay could have said, sorry, Charlie.
Sure, Maharaj. Thank you. And the second question is, I've been pondering lately, like, what is that is stopping me? What is that, hindering my sadhana? When I contemplate, what I understood is the false ego is predominant. And I just wanted to kind of see how, I know it's a how question, but it's like, for me personally, what is that I should be doing to subside that false ego in a way that I can progress further?
In Kapila Dev's, in chapter 29 of Canto 3, Kapila Dev gives the answer. You gonna look it up? No, you don't. Just pay attention. Just leave your phone. Pay attention. Bhakti has the power to dissolve the subtle body. The subtle body is resting upon the most subtle of the subtle body, the false ego. Bhakti has the power to dissolve the subtle body, the material subtle body that covers the soul. Bhakti. So then the real question is, if false ego is the obstacle for bhakti, how do I strengthen bhakti such that the subtle body becomes dissolved? So, samsatir haritoshanam. And this feature, that feature, the other feature, where instead of haritoshanam is the principle, who's in the center? False ego. Me. I, me, and mine. That's the obstacle. That's the block. The blocks bhakti. No, then there's subdivisions and subdivisions, and the whole thing is a big mess. But that's at the root. It's the first covering potency. It's the first one to come, it's the last one to go. So the substitute is servant. Like Ambarish. We discussed this in the car on the way back. For me, one of the outstanding features of that whole pastime is when the fiery demon was sent by Durvasa Muni, his body didn't move and his mind didn't move. That's not human. So here comes something flying at you. Your arms go, you don't have to think about it. It's reflex. And even his mind didn't move. His mind didn't move. There's a fiery demon coming, charging at him. His mind didn't move. What's that? Bhakti, pure Shuddha Bhakti. And Sudarshan Chakra protected him. There's a history of how Sudarshan Chakra became by his side. Lord Vishnu put him, instructed Sudarshan, you stay here and protect him. So he was protected. So what's our shelter? And if we have false ego as our shelter, we're going to figure out a way to protect ourselves. Well, we think that we can. So bhakti. Okay?
Thank you, Maharaj.
Maharaj, thank you for answering the question we were discussing about when we were coming to the class.
Speak slowly.
When we were coming to the class, in the car we were discussing how do we get qualified. So the derivation was become humble, humility. But you answered that humility is not enough. We need to get the qualifications.
Bhakti.
Bhakti,
Yeah.
yeah. So thank you for answering that question that we didn't even ask in today's class. And another point is, in yesterday's class you said, one who's pure does not find fault in others. Thank you, Maharaj. That was very, very, very striking, and I've heard this many times earlier from other devotees, but it was very moving. Thank you for giving that instruction as well. The question that I have from today's class is, the 4 varnashramas, is it possible a person may have some
Speak slowly. Is it possible to do what?
Sorry, Maharaj. Is it possible that one may have qualities of all those 4 varnashrama divisions switching in that person based on the situation? If that is the case, how do we identify which division we belong to?
This is the same question I spoke of during class. How do we know what our duty is, our position in the social structure? How do we know? That's the question, right? Is that your question or no?
Not exactly.
What is it exactly?
Okay, first question is it possible that a person may have the qualities, multiple qualities of the divisions?
They have qualities of?
The 4 divisions. Or switching based on the situation.
I don't understand. Why are you asking that question?
Because that is confusing to understand what we are. So I was trying to figure out.
I gave the example of Shrutakirti.
Yes.
He's Brahminical, but he's doing an administrative function.
Okay. Yes.
In Krishna Balaram Mandir.
Okay.
But it's in relation to deity worship, and his nature is, so it's a mix. But he's not a Shudra. He's not a Vaishya. He's a Brahmana that has accepted some service for the deity and for his good friend Panchagoda and Prabhupada. He's a servant. So it's some service where he doesn't have to be like, a macho, a powerful guy that tells people and stuff. He's still Brahminical by his nature, but there's discrepancy. He mentioned some of the discrepancies. I don't need to go into it, and he's dealing with it. It was somewhat neglected and messy, and some of it is irreparable without the detail. So it's some administration, but it's connected to his Brahminical spirit, because in his case, the place is, you're focusing on him, but the broad answer is there can be a mix, but not all four. Anything else? Srila Prabhupada ki? Jai.